Thank you for your time today. I appreciate you all joining us. Because of the length of time that it might take to get through today's coffee break, we're going to go ahead and get it started early, but I do want to remind everyone that we will have this for playback in your review afterwards. We'll be sending it to you if you RSVP'd. Second here. Oh, that's just a welcome from Stephanie. Excellent. So I'll say again, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Naeem Thompson, and I am Director of Client Engagement here at Academic Analytics. We're happy to have you all join us for today's webinar, which is part of our Coffee Break series. During the webinar, if you run into any technical issues, please reach out to Stephanie Dunn, who is our events manager. You can message her directly through the chat feature at the bottom of the screen. Just a few housekeeping notes to mention before we get started. All attendees are on mute, but we certainly want to hear from you. So please use the chat feature to post any questions and or feedback that you have during the session today. For any that we are unable to address during the webinar, the account manager who works with you or with your campus will reach out directly for follow-up. We will try to also reserve time at the end for for a Q&A session, depending on how much time we have. But again, if we are unable to get to your questions, we will make sure if they're typed in chat to follow up with you after the fact. For today's webinar, I'd like to thank Dr. Linda Renzulli for attending today. She is the department head at Purdue University and will be leading today's coffee break that is titled The Utilization of Academic Analytics by Department Chairs in Recruitment and Retirement. Dr. Renzulli received her PhD in sociology from UNC Chapel Hill. She started her faculty career at the University of Georgia and stayed there for 15 years before moving to Purdue University in 2016, where she was hired as a department head. She's been the head of the Department of Sociology for 9 years at Purdue and has been part of hiring over 20 faculty while at Purdue, of which there are 2 associate professors, 4 full professors, and the rest were assistant faculty hires. So without further ado, I'll ask Dr. Renzulli to kick us off with some context about why we thought this discussion was important today. All right.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. I wanted to just talk a little bit about some of my experiences using academic analytics for hiring and then thinking about other ways we can use it. So faculty life cycles and discussions of who to hire, how to develop faculty retention, and thinking about even retirements are a part of our culture building. And as department heads or department chairs, this is something I think we're all thinking about all the time. And so on top of that, there's strategic plans that are used as providing frameworks for agreements with our own faculty and with the colleges and universities that we work for and within. And so one of the things that's really important is for units to be able to leverage their own knowledge of the field to negotiate in that hiring process, particularly when the strategic plans are 1 step above us, or maybe even 2 steps above us. And changes in our understanding of how data are used and the role of a unit in their expertise and so forth has changed over time, right? We're no longer in scenarios, at least in my university, and I think many of yours as well, in which when somebody retires, you just get the line back and you can rehire. And so it's all about the strategic planning on thinking about how you can build a culture and a department. And I think that academic analytics has played a really big role in helping me address the sort of between the university strategic plans and colleges and our own units' interests for where we want to go and what we want it to look like. So using these data have been really helpful. So I think once I learned how to do it, I really just always want to share it with people. And so that's what we're here for. Go to the next slide, I think. The specific context for this, for me to use academic analytics in this way, started when I reached out to our account manager after the Department of Sociology here at Purdue had created a new major. And we needed to hire within it. We didn't have enough of expertise, but for the major for undergraduates, but also then to build out the intellectual community and the scholarship around what that major could produce. So I had reached out to faculty and asked them, okay, who do we recruit for this position? It was interesting and new and innovative. And they came up with several highly qualified and interesting folks to think about. And once we got a highly regarded candidate who applied for the position, I wanted to support that application, that potential to the dean, right? To show the impact of the dean. Remember, this is strategic planning at the dean's level, with our expertise at the unit level. And so I wanted to say, okay, how do we combine both that expertise that we know, that our faculty know, and the reputations that they have, with what the data that the dean is going to want to see for this big initiative, in terms of our unit. And so that's how it started. And I reached out to Naeem at the time, who happened to have at the time been my account manager. So we can go to the next slide, and I can walk through a little bit exactly how I did it, and then talk a little bit with you about what the outcome looked like and how I use these data. So the very first thing is I had been on something like this, and I had heard people talking about using these data in all these different kinds of ways. And I said, okay, let me just reach out to my account manager, Naeem, and see if there was a way to figure out, if we hired, this person or that person, what it would do for our reputation academically, from a data perspective for our dean, something my dean really likes to see, and understandably, right? So I did that, and it was a really quick, yeah, we can do this. So what happened was I gave Naeem the information that we needed on this particular candidate. I said, okay, can you go find this candidate and put her into my department as if she was already here? What does that do for us? What does it make us look like in academic analytics? And then we pulled out this unit modeling, which we'll talk about in a second. And I had some really, really productive conversations, not only with my dean, which is, what it says here on the slide, but I'd like to also say really productive conversations with my faculty. Like, they felt really validated, that they knew that the person that they said, like, was the right fit, intellectually for our department, actually was, in terms of these data. So it was a really nice validating moment for almost everyone. Go to the next slide. Okay. So here's the meat of it. And this is what I think we really want to talk about, what this all looks like. So I want to get this right. So after Naeem put into our unit, this person, we see some changes. So let's look at the column 1, which is the actual unit. So at the time when we did this, which was at this point several years ago, that this is the where our unit looked like. So we had 25 faculty. We had a scholarly research index of 0.3, books, were 9, and 16 books, and so forth. And so what I said was, okay, let's think, if we added this person, what would happen to our faculty with no other changes. So stage 1 total, which is now looking at the second column, we can see we added 1 faculty. So we went, to 26 plus 1. And our scholarly index, research index, went to 0.4. So let me do a quick refresher on this. I know many of you who are sitting here obviously know what the SRI is, but I always need a refresher on it. I always go back to this exact thing that Naeem told me, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'll do that here for you. So the index is a discipline normalized Z-score, where 0 is the average for the discipline, right? So if you have a positive score, as we do here, that means that the unit is above the national average in their discipline. Okay, so moving from a 0.3 to a 0.4, as you see here, for 1 person is actually quite incredible, right? This really hits, like I said, my faculty were really excited, like, we were right, So what my dean really cares about, the scholarly research index. Although I would say that right now, this happened in 2020, by the way. So 5 years later, I would say that publishing books is a big push at this university right now, and thinking about how we can contribute to knowledge through book writing. And so I might now think about the books where we went from 16 to 18 and know that might be a place where my dean would be really interested in seeing what would this person bring. And of course you can see that on a CV, but I think when you see it on a table like this, it stands out in a way that's different than saying, oh yeah, this person has 2 books. What does that mean for the whole unit? Um, Okay, so what I did is I brought this to the dean. I said, okay, let's sit down and have a conversation about this candidate. And I walked through all of this with him. And I have to say, there was a really, he was grateful on a couple of levels. One was just that I would take the time to really consider my unit and what this person can do, what this hiring can do. So that was really good. It also helped validate, like I've been saying, the use of these data for him. He liked that, but also he can see, wait, your department really does know the field. And I'm not my dean, as all of yours are, do care a lot about our units and know that we are strong units. But every piece of data is just better for helping us understand where we are and where we can go. So what I said to him is like, look, I understand that we're still in the interviewing stage at that point, um, but that top folks in our field see potential in this recommended person, right? And this is corroborated by the quantitative data um, and from academic analytics. So that what we're doing is honing in on strong candidates, and we'll be really lucky to pursue this particular scholar. I did this again and again in other ways to show him how it could work, and it was a really positive outcome. That's how I would say. I will say we ended up not being able to hire this particular candidate, but that isn't actually the point because in other times I've done it, we were. This was just the very first time. Um, you know, sometimes when you go for really strong candidates, you don't always get them, but I'm really excited that we tried and we went there, and this helped us do it. So I I think if you can take this kind of table to your units and to your upper administration, there'll be a better fit between what your expertise are saying and that of what the data are saying. I'm going to hand it over to Naeem to actually walk you through how we did this, and then I'll finish with a couple other ways that I thought about how to use it for retention, which is really an interesting piece, but also in terms of strategic planning, in terms of retirement and other strategic goals that the unit might have to convince the university to go in that direction. So Naeem, take it away.
Thank you, Linda. I really appreciate it. Again, when you and I were having a discussion about this earlier, and the timing about doing this particular webinar, we felt today, especially, or now especially, was a helpful time to frame this discussion. One, because it's one that a lot of department chairs have with us, and so what I wanted to do was not only give you context for the types of usage we see, and give you and make sure that we are presented with a specific example, but my part in this today is to really talk through the actual process itself, hopefully to give you an idea of how easy it is, and then what we'll do is we'll wrap up with Linda kind of talking about some additional context and other ways that there might be use here. The other thing I wanted to note is we do have a PowerPoint that will be available afterward with the step-by-step instructions, which you see here. But we will be doing a live demonstration just to move things a little bit more quickly today and give you a feel for what the data might look like. So in the first example, we are using an anonymized version of this, which is why it'll look a little bit different than what your interfaces might look like. But again, all of the buttons and all the examples will still persist. So what we've done here first is gone to the particular department in question. When you do, it'll land on the overview page, but I went ahead and forwarded on to moving from the overview tab to the unit modeling tab, which is the primary tab for how we will be able to run these scenarios and look at the impacts of faculty hires in this particular case. So what you'll notice is that over on the right-hand side, you'll see the names in question of particular faculty, their ranks, the data elements that go along with them. And in this case, because we were representing a specific faculty member or specific faculty members, what I did was I did a quick look on the back end of the data, which all account managers can do. And I created an example where we modeled in those faculty members, on the back end. And then we provided that information to Dr. Renzulli, or it would be to the unit administrator in question. Again, once you have access, you can give access to anyone else. You can share it with your dean, with your colleagues, etc. For an example, all through here. Now, if you're generating one of these reports yourself, then I wanted to show you very briefly manually what you would do is you would actually click add modeled faculty member if you have the CV right in front of you. And if not, you would click on add from quintile averages, which would give you a way of kind of representing or estimating the averages of certain types of faculty we would see in the database based on various breakdowns. But again, in this case, we had an example in question. So what I did preemptively was click this button, which is example 1. And then what you will notice it will do is it will show you the stage change at the bottom. In this case, we added 2 faculty members, right, just to show you it's possible to do with 1 or more faculty. You can also stage this so that you can, show what the addition of 1 hire is versus 2, etc. So there are a few ways that you can modify this as well. But the idea is once you have those faculty in, their data are in, then you would click next and then generate. And what that will provide is, a data set that looks like this. All right, so I'm going to move this over. And this will get you to the radar page. What I also recommend, just to show you the difference between that, is it will basically default to this page, but we generally recommend moving to the summary pages because it gives you that breakdown at the variable level. And then just as Dr. Renzulli described, you can see the initial inputs for what the faculty look like, what the addition of those 2 faculty could do potentially, and then here you can see the net changes represented over on this side. Everything again is downloadable if you would like as well. The other thing that I will show you very briefly is what if you wanted to have the opposite conversation, which does come up potentially as well. And we'll talk about this and add a little bit more context, but let's say there were potential retirements coming up or scenarios where there were retention offers being made and you wanted to show the impact of losing particular faculty. What you would be able to do at this point is, as opposed to selecting either a unit model or adding particular faculty based on the data you see in their CV or from our own, qualitatively differentiated versions of the data based on averages, is you can actually choose or represent the faculty that would be removed in this case, just to show as an example. Now, I've already done this ahead of time. Again, I'm using a separate unit model, which in this case is example 2. But very similarly, I have selected faculty that are already in the unit for this example. And then what this is going to do is show hypothetically what happens if those faculty members were retired. Again, I would click next and then generate. And then what that will leave you with is a page that looks like this, right? Very similar in terms of its layouts. You'll initially start on the radar, but again, because it can sometimes be difficult to see the changes differentially here, we will go to the summary table. And as we said, you can see the actual unit, the stage after the removal of faculty, and you can see the overall net changes here as well. And Linda, I wanted to give you the opportunity to see if there's anything you wanted to say on this particular point.
Yeah, I think with retirements, I haven't yet done it, but I'm about to. And the idea here is like saying, okay, here's this amazing scholar that we have worked on, developing and investing in. What's the next step? Like, what will we do now that we know that these 2 scholars will be retiring? That's part of the natural life course of a department, right? We have to expect some retirements. And so here we can show very clearly that if we lose these 2 folks, we're going to lose some of our scholarly research index prestige, if you will. We're now at 0.6 to 0.5. And so the next conversation for me would be about, what do we do? Do we go in and think about hiring, sort of going from that stage 1 and looking at what that looks like, and now adding a new person? Do we go in as an assistant professor? How does that get us? How many years is it going to take us to move back from the 0.5 to the 0.6 to 0.5, or sorry, 0.5 to 0.6? and do we think that at this moment the reduction is so large that we really do need to go over for a senior faculty member? These are the kinds of discussions that I think we want to have when we're talking about retirements. And I think it will be really helpful to see so that the dean realizes like this is a big change to our department, and how do we sort of recover from that and rebuild around a scholar that's left us. Now, one of the things I think is really important, one is about context over the whole where we are right now. So many units are thinking and bracing themselves for not hiring at all right now. I can imagine that be the case. I think that's what's happening nationally, right? Also, I'm a little bit worried, honestly, about retirements happening. People being like, okay, I'm got to be done. So I think even more than ever, you know, thinking about how we use these data to reflect the future of our departments is really key. Even in this context where we're all a little bit nervous. However, I think it's also remember that the context of these data is one piece of the puzzle, right? So we can be wrong on occasion, right? I was lucky in the sense that our experts matched what the academic analytics said, and it worked really beautifully. There could be times, of course, where the reputation outweighs some of the things that academic analytics can bring to the table. It's not a perfect solution for everything, and I think the most important thing to me is the conversation between where the experts say and the data come in. And so it's using this tool, the correct tool and the correct emphasis for both for these conversations, right? And so it's possible that our experts see something that the data don't see, and vice versa, which is, I think, really another important part. Maybe seeing a record that would actually excel us that people didn't know before, right? So I think that's an important piece. I'd like to think about how we could add someone to academic analytics, a portfolio that we would want to look at to think about how can we strategically be part of the strategic conversation, right? Say, okay, if we move in this direction in a particular study, subfields of our discipline, and we find folks that have this kind of characteristics, what can that do for our department? And I think there's a lot to be said that can happen here with academic analytics and our expertise. So I think I really want to make sure that everyone knows that the way I use it and the way I think we all might benefit most from it is the combination of the expert and our expert knowledge from our faculty and the data together. Okay, so that's my particular thought on how to use this. I found it really helpful. I honestly go around telling everybody, all my other head friends, like, you should try this, and it's worked out really well for a lot of us. And so I hope that it will also be useful for you as this really important tool.
I really appreciate your thoughts on this, and we did get quite a few questions in, so I will try to address them as best we can. And like I said, for those that we're unable to address, we will definitely try to make sure to follow up with you via your account managers for each of your accounts. One thing that I'll start here with is the conversation was about, is this capability specific to academic analytics? What about other digital education platforms? What I can say is that this is the only tool we're aware of that's able to break down the impact of faculty within a department's home, because that is the one thing that we do collect consistently that other platforms may not, which is where faculty are, which units they're affiliated to every year. And we have an updated roster that persists through program data, department data, and college level data. So I think that makes us singular from that perspective, and being able to see the impacts of faculty's departments, because we're, I think, the only resource that has that right now. And please do not quote me on that. That was as of my last checking. But I do think that's important to acknowledge. It's one of the major differences when you're looking at the data. And then the follow-on question, which actually was followed up by several of your colleagues, just to let you know, which is when you add modeled faculty, do we auto add the CV electronically, or is there some kind of manual method? I think that question is great. And so what I will do is I'm going to go back and I just will reference that in the PowerPoint that we will be sending out. There are some instructions on how to do this manually, but because we have time today, I'll just talk you through this. So one of the reasons why when we have these conversations, we will recommend, at least initially, probably reach out to your account managers because as you suspected, the data is framed within our normal benchmarking frameworks, right? So that is 4 years for articles, 5 years for citations, 5 years for grants, 10 years for books, the lifetime of an award for, the awardees, etc. So with that being the case, oftentimes it can be a little difficult to read a CV and then directly know which of those things should be added to academic analytics. So what we would recommend are two things: either one, which Dr. Renzulli did, reaching out to your account manager to help you put that together. As long as we know the person's name and we have the institution that they're from, we can basically give you what their benchmarking data would look like. Additionally, we have had a feature added to Research Insights that will also allow you to look up a person's profile nationally and limit the scale or the scope of that view from everything that academic analytics has just to those elements that count in the current benchmarking model, which means in theory, this is something that you can do yourself if you're using Research Insights. You can just go to a person's profile, click on the button when you're looking at their items that says that will take it from viewing all to viewing benchmarking data, and then that will give you the appropriate numbers to add in here manually. So to answer your question, there is a way to do that manually. And to show you how to do that very briefly, again, if you don't have that unit model provided by your account manager, is to do the added model faculty through here. So you could click this button. And then as you can see, one, you'll have the option to change the professorial rank, which matters in terms of how the data is counted for that individual versus their colleagues. And then in each of these other areas, you will see there is a means of adding the data manually, right? So doing it directly from the CV without without being familiar with our methodology might be a little difficult. But again, if you use our tools, Research Insights, or ask an account manager, we can either add those model faculty in or make sure you have the data to add in the right time frame as well. And that's a great question. The other question that I saw was, what happens if retirees can come back to work, working, some amount less in terms of their FTE? Honestly, that is a new question for us in that regard, and I think it's a worthy one. There are probably a few ways that we might be able to consider that data, but quite honestly, we would want to work with you one-on-one to figure out exactly how you'd want that calculated. But again, there are a few ways that we might be able to do that. But again, if you work with your account manager, that is something we can either figure out doing through these tools that we're showing you now, or through perhaps some more custom version with further discussion. So what I will tell you is I have not seen something like that being done yet, but it is possible to do as long as we're given the framework for how you'd like to see that information represented. So the other thing that sorry, go ahead, Dr.
Can you tell them where they can find their account managers if they don't know who that is? Because I think that might be really important.
Yes. So the first thing I would recommend is reaching out to your data liaison on campus, and that will usually, provide you the account manager's name for your account or for your university. However, for those of you that are on and have received data from academic analytics, it is likely that you are getting updates and probably still have access to the emails that we sent you. Generally speaking, your account manager would be the one sending most of that material to you. You can also reach out to help at academic analytics. And if you let them know you're trying to get a hold of your account manager, then we'll make sure you get a hold of them directly that way as well. But usually it's easier to reach out to your data liaison on campus if you know who they are. Thank you.
There's a question there for me. Do you want me to take that one?
Yes, absolutely.
So it says, how can your approach inform planning for longer term department goals and faculty composition and longer term planning across the college? So I think the approach is both short term and long term in that sense. So so the way it worked for me originally was there was like a long-term strategic plan that the department had, right? We wanted to create this new major. We thought this was going to be helpful for a couple of things that coupled or sort of built upon another long-term initiative at the university. And then we said, okay, this is how we could play a role in that. And then we said, okay, when we play this role, this is the impact it's going to have. So if that makes sense, it was sort of like stepwise. I think the question is asking a little bit about how we might do it from the bottom up. And I haven't yet done that, although I really think it could be an interesting way to go. I think a lot of times our faculty, I don't know, many of you may have been in scenarios where you used to sit around a table and say like, oh, what kind of area are we going to hire in? And bring that to the dean for hiring. And for us, it's actually changed a lot. It kind of goes the opposite way. But I think we could do the same thing from the bottom up, right? Where we say like, look, we see that the field of sociology is moving in this direction, or we would like to like jump into this direction. What would it look like? And so I can imagine then talking about finding folks that way and saying to the dean, look, if we really want to build in this area, if we build in this area, there are folks out there who we feel like we have a potential of recruiting. If we did, this is what our scores look like, if you will, from academic analytics, and therefore it is a plausible way to move forward. Not just because, at least in my department and in my units, the idea of thinking about hiring for teaching is not alone what we need to think about. We need to think about the strategic planning for the scholarship along with teaching. And so I think this would be the way to say, hey, if we go in this direction, we can recruit these kinds of scholars, and that could then build to say, hey, this is why we should go in that direction. So I think there's room for bottom to the top. There's one thing I forgot to say, and I'd love to be able to just say this, is that I think that oftentimes our networks are based on the people we know. Obviously we know that, right? And so this also provides us a way of building out a larger pool than we might have already known about. And so I think there's a way to incorporate this in thinking about diversity of perspective and ideas to our fields in ways that only our networks and where they are limited, and this expands that. So I think that helps also in thinking about where we can move this.
I really appreciate both the question and your answer to it. And I do see a few other questions, unfortunately, that I don't think we're going to be able to get to today, just because we are a little bit over time and we want to be respectful of everyone's time here, including yours. So what I will say is I do appreciate all the additional questions that we did not get to today. We will make sure to follow up with everyone who has asked them. There were definitely some great ones that we were unable to talk to today, but I do just want to say, first of all, thank you, Linda, for your time today and for helping us get this put together. And again, thank you to all of you who have also attended today's webinar. I just wanted to note that we do not only have additional coffee breaks that are on the schedule, but also some in-person events that we will be attending. So, please be on the lookout for those when we send you these PowerPoints, and just hopefully you'll be able to meet with us if you also attend some of these meetings. And again, if you would like to view past webinars, or if you'd like to get any more information, please go to the Academic Analytics website, which is www.academicanalytics.com for additional information. So again, thank you, Dr. Renzulli, for your time today. Thank you for everyone in attendance, and thank you, Stephanie Dunn, for helping us get all this done logistically.